Today, I'm going to break down how I've been able to grow my business to 7 figures while traveling to 50 countries. Now, there's an awful lot of travel content on the internet. There's also a lot of business content, but I find very little content that goes over how to effectively run and grow a business while traveling. Not freelancing, but actually growing a business. So in this video, by your request, I'm going to break down exactly how I've been able to do it, covering how to actually find time to enjoy your destination of a hectic schedule, the exact routine that suited my traveling, how to keep your focus high even when there's tons of distractions, how I manage client calls in different environments and time zones, my mobile work setup, favorite destinations, how I research new destinations, find Airbnbs, keep my business moving while I'm moving, and also answering some Q&A that you guys asked when I first mentioned this video on my Instagram stories. So we're gonna get into a lot of cool stuff. Now, if you're brand new here, my name is Michael, and for 10 years, I've been building agencies, and since 2018, I've been traveling and doing so. I currently run a coaching program called Grow B2B, as well as an agency called Done For You Meetings. Both are based around B2B prospecting. Now, if you're watching this video, you may be following me from my previous cold email videos, or maybe you searched something travel related, and that's how you found this video. So those are the companies I run. And while doing so, I have been to around 50 countries. Why do I say around 50 countries? Well, the definition of what is or isn't a country is a little bit blurry, but these are some or most of the places that I have been so far. In fact, I actually included some screenshots from Airbnb because I pretty much travel exclusively on Airbnb, which we'll get into more information on that later. But point being, I've managed to grow some pretty successful companies while traveling the world, and I'm going to break down how I did it and how I continue to do it. Now, I'll go ahead and make a note that this document will be available to download in the description if you do want to have it to look over and reference. Now, the question I get asked the most from people who generally define themselves as entrepreneurs is, won't I lose focus by traveling? And the answer to that is yes, there is an opportunity cost to traveling. But what I think is really important here is having a personal belief system where you can prioritize what your definition of success is to then understand how traveling fits into it. So I want to go through the system that I've personally put together, and this is how I found what to prioritize in my life. This doesn't need to be the way you do it, but I want to share what's worked for me, and maybe this will help you reflect on if traveling would make sense for you or not. Now, to emphasize, I think having a personal definition of success is incredibly important. If you don't have it, how do you know if you're successful? And obviously, success varies a lot. This could be raising a family, it could be traveling, it could be making $1 billion. That is going to depend on you. And I think it's important to list what you actually want in life. Now, I don't want to get too philosophical here, but I do think it's important to understand this to better answer the question, is traveling worth it? Now, I have a list of around 20 things I want out of life. I made this when I was 18, I'm 24 now. For the most part, it stayed the same. Now, a couple excerpts from my list are to have incredible adventures regularly to compare what others consider once in a lifetime. Now, it's kind of interesting here because most people want business to get freedom and to do cool things, right? But a lot of times I see people where they just keep doing business and business and business, and time passes and they didn't do anything cool. So I want to do incredible things. I want to go on crazy adventures, motorcycle trips, hiking trips. I want to do all these activities, and a lot of people only do these once in their life. So I want to do that regularly. That's very important to me. Another one is I want to go to every country or all I want. Now, I put all I want because I don't know if I actually go to everyone, but that is certainly what I'm aiming towards. So if you're only optimizing for how much money you can make before you die, traveling isn't for you. You will likely accomplish less when traveling than when moving. However, if you know what you want in life and traveling is important to you, you can be successful while traveling and growing a business, but like anything else, it will require sacrifice, work, and some planning. Now, how do I go through and really define what I want? Well, every year I go through a process, and I'm going to walk you through it. I did not create this graphic here. I found it on Twitter. I forgot who made it, so I couldn't credit them. So if this was you or you know the person, drop it in the comments. But it was something called like a mission triangle. It's a pretty basic idea. It's what is your long-term vision, 20 plus years, 10-year, 5-year, 3-year, annual, quarterly, monthly goals, and then your weekly to-do and daily to-do. And the whole idea is making sure that all of this is in alignment. If you're not doing action items today that go towards your 20-year goal, then you are out of alignment. So I don't personally do 20, 10, 5, 3, but I do a 20-year vision, I do a 10-year vision, a 3-year vision, I skip 5, and then I break it down on my goals. Now, for example, I have my 20-year vision here, my 10-year, my 3-year, and this hyperlinks to other things. Now, I don't want to share everything because a lot of it is personal, but to give a general idea. It then breaks down to my annual goals where I track them based on where I'm at for progress. I attach any details or tracking sheets, also what it's related to, for example, personal finance, business, or self-improvement. This then breaks down into my daily to-do list, which I host on Airtable. Now, I can make a whole video on my Airtable to-do list system, but the main thing here is I'm making sure all these things are in alignment from top to bottom. Because if I don't have that, then how do I know if I'm doing the right things to get what I want in life? So that's how I look at it. And I do want to emphasize here, if your goal is working to have freedom, don't let greed take that away from you. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with just optimizing for making a ton of money, but if the whole idea is to travel, don't get so obsessed over making $10 million, $100 million. I've met a lot of people where they tell me, yeah, my goal is to travel. And I say, well, you have enough money now, you can do so. So obviously be smart, but consider that you don't need to make $10 million to travel. You can make okay money and travel. I mean, I can make a lot less than I do and still travel pretty well. So that gets the whole philosophical part out of the way. Let's get into more like logistics and planning. Now, I want to answer 2 questions. The first one is, how do I choose where to go? So what are my considerations when doing so? And also some of my favorite destinations, both for working and for traveling. And when I'm separating the two, I'm talking about work and travel, and then just more of like a vacation or a trip. So let's go through both. Now, starting off with my considerations, I break them down to 2 categories. We have logistical considerations and we have personal considerations. Logistical are around planning, personal are around what you want out of a place. So looking at logistical, the first one is, what does the political stability of a country look like? For example, I love going to Bangladesh. I've been to Bangladesh, I think 4 times. I spent about a month in the country. I have some of my best friends there. It's a really interesting place, but the political stability is not very good. For example, as I record this, it is Sunday, July 21st, 2024. There are protests going on and a lot of the internet in the country has been blacked out. So if I was there right now, this would be very bad for my business. So it's a place I love to visit for a short period of time, but the reason I've only spent a month there between 4 trips is I can't go there for very long because it's not realistic to grow a large business. So that's a consideration. What does the political stability look like? Now, if your goal is to go to like pretty stable, normal places, that's fine. But me personally, I like to go to some interesting, more off-beaten path places. So I am definitely considering the political stability for work as well as my own personal safety. Now, the next one is, what is the internet speed like in a country? Now, if you've only lived in the United States, you may be wondering, is internet really a problem? It is. So you need to consider what the internet speed is like in a country. Now, one of the continents I haven't been able to go to is Africa. Now, I'm hoping to change that early next year, now that Africa does have Starlink in some countries and you can get fast internet. But as of last year, it was really hard to get good, fast, consistent internet in Africa, this section of like, for example, South Africa, Egypt, Morocco, and I think Mauritius. So there are a lot of places where fast and consistent internet are still a problem. Even in Europe, there's some countries I've had issues with. So I'd like to do really thorough research on what the internet speed is like in a country before I go there. Now, the place I start is on Speedtest. They have a global index that ranks every country, and they'll give you averages. You can also sometimes get averages in cities because cities will vary. Now, I also like to check on Reddit to see what people say, because sometimes they'll have a high speed but bad consistency. You need speed and consistency. So this is something that's very important to me. And I will go to countries with bad internet, but normally for 2 or 3 days as opposed to spending a month plus, which is what I normally do when I'm choosing destinations. This is another interesting one where if you've never been to specifically Asia, you may have never considered it. And that is, what is the sound pollution like? Can I get around it too? So for example, some cities or countries just have so much sound and noise that it's really hard to get around. For example, I spent some time in Delhi in India, and the constant honking and noise was so hard to get around that it made it really hard to focus. And also, if I'm taking any client calls or sales calls, how can someone take me seriously with all this background noise? It just comes off really unprofessional. Now, I'm sure if I was there longer, I could probably find a way around it, but this is a consideration. Now, for me, the noisiest countries I've been to have been India, Bangladesh, and Vietnam. I like all these countries, but I would not want to work there long term because I really like quiet. For example, I'm recording this in Alger, Georgia in the United States, and if I stop talking, there is literally zero noise, and that helps me a lot personally with my focus. Now, like all these things, your personal preferences and how much you care will vary, but for me, that is something I care a lot about. Another one here is there consistent electricity? And if not, can I get a generator? For example, I'm planning a trip to Zambia next year, and consistent electricity is an issue. The government's shutting off electricity for 5+ hours every single day, and obviously I need consistent electricity for my work. I have sales calls that I can't just reschedule. So can you get a generator? And if you can't get a generator, can you get a backup generator for your generator? Now, you won't need to think like this for more simple, easy to travel places, but when you get into some more difficult countries, let's call them, you will need to consider the situation with electricity. Another one that's pretty obvious is, what is safety like? Now, I've spent time in some areas that are traditionally considered unsafe, and sometimes I do end up feeling okay, but other times I spend so much mental energy looking after myself, my girlfriend, my friends, my belongings, but it does affect my work. You only have so much mental energy every day, and if you use a good portion of it just being safe, it can be really exhausting. For example, and based on my own personal experience, I felt really unsafe in Lima, Peru, and I actually left early because it was affecting my work. So you do want to consider, this place I'm going to, what is the safety like? Based on the country and the city, because cities are going to vary a ton. I mean, look at the US, you have some cities that are terribly dangerous and some that are safe, and how is this going to affect me and my work? So that's definitely a consideration that may be kind of a stereotypical one, but you do want to consider it. Another is, are there any Airbnbs that look good for work in a country I'm planning on visiting? Now, later on in this video, we'll go over how I choose an Airbnb, but this is kind of a point to preface it. And you may think that every country will have Airbnbs that are good for work, and while most do, a surprising amount don't. For example, I want to visit Timor-Leste. If you don't know where that is, it's in Asia near Indonesia later this year, and there is not a good selection of Airbnbs. There is like 50, and none of them are good for work. So that would not be a place I want to spend a lot of time, among other reasons, but I will go for a short trip. So are there Airbnbs that actually exist that you can visit and stay at? So that's a consideration. The next one's a pretty boring one, but it is really important, is what is the visa situation like? Can you stay there for a long period of time? Now, I'm an American, so I have a really strong passport with very few restrictions, but there are rules that affect me. There's some places I need a visa. There's other places where maybe I can go, but only for like 2 weeks. So the question is, if I want to stay somewhere for a month, 2 months, 3 months, what does it look like? And that will vary a lot based on your country. For example, my girlfriend is Thai and has a pretty weak passport, and it can make traveling significantly more difficult for her than it can for me. So if you're from a EU country or the US or Canada, this is less of an issue, but depending where you're from, this could be a huge bottleneck and annoyance. Now, coming up to my last two logistical considerations, this one is, does the country line up on a logical flight path to my next destination? Now, since I'm traveling on an ongoing basis, I put a good amount of effort into finding the quickest flight route possible. I don't want to be going from here to here to here to here, because it takes a lot of time, mental energy, and also if I'm flying too much, I personally get sick. So I'm looking for really logical flight routes that are on the way to the next destination, because I'm just trying to avoid getting sick, to avoid having my baggage lost, or any other thing that can come with having really weird flight routes. Now, the final logistical consideration is, what is my time zone? Now, this is going to be based on if you're a night person, a morning person, or maybe you don't care and you're just flexible. But for me, I am generally a morning person. I have a hard time working past 1 a.m. Or, for example, my business partner likes to work for like 5, 6 a.m. into the weirdo hours. So this does make an impact onto where we're considering traveling to. Because especially on a larger duration, can you handle staying up to like 2, 3 a.m., for example, in Japan and take sales calls? Now, if you're working software or something that doesn't require meetings as much, fantastic. But if you're in an agency space like me, where you're talking to clients and prospects constantly, it can be really exhausting. And that is my list of logical considerations. And again, this document is available for download in the description. So let's go ahead and jump into my personal considerations. Now, why do I call these personal considerations? Well, it's because they're personal. These are things that you may care more or less because they're less logistical. I think everybody's considering, for example, safety or internet speeds, but these ones you may care a lot about or may not care at all. Now, the first one I have here of a total of 4 considerations is, what is a community of entrepreneurs like? Now, I really like to meet like-minded people, potentially even find new clients in person. So when I'm going to a country, I'm considering who is there that I can meet, collaborate with, learn from, sell to, or be sold from, right? So sometimes when I go to a country, I'm choosing it based on who's there. For example, Dubai is a fantastic place for networking. It's probably the best place for networking in the entire world. If you're an e-com, software, agency, info product space, it is the best place to be for meeting people. Now, if there wasn't that network in Dubai, I would probably only spend 2-3 days there because I don't think it's that interesting. But because of a network there, I have spent a month there. Where on the other hand, let's take Baku, Azerbaijan. Maybe you've never heard of Baku because it's not that popular, but I love it. It's such an interesting city, interesting country. It's affordable. There's just so many positive things about Baku. However, I had a really hard time meeting anybody, and I met literally no one that was an entrepreneur related to my industry at all. So, I'm also balancing with a place, is it a network I can tap into? Can I not? Is it worth it? Is it not? So I'm just considering when I'm booking a place, what is the network like there? Another one is, what is the cost like? Now, this might matter not at all to you or might matter a lot. Now, myself, I would consider myself basic when it comes to expenses. I'm not too fancy, and I prefer keeping my money in index funds as opposed to going towards fancy meals or clubs, but I also do care about comfort, and I'm gonna take an Uber instead of a bus, but I'm just generally not too fancy. Because of this, there are certain countries I'd rather spend a few days in and have a higher quality standard of life than spend a month in and have a lower quality. For example, I went to Monaco and Switzerland this year, and I did short trips there because I prefer spending a few days with a high quality of life as opposed to spending a month there and going below my typical standards. So again, it's a personal consideration, but I do look at costs, and I think pretty much everybody does. The next one is, what is there to actually do? Now, I've been to very few places that don't have anything to do. I think pretty much everywhere has some things to do, but I definitely do consider this before I go. Now, I've also found that as you mature as a traveler, it's less about what attractions are there and more about what normal things do I like doing exist in this area. In my case, it's I want to be near a basketball court and a skate park and maybe a video game cafe, coffee shops, thrift shops. These are all things that tie into my hobbies. And, since I'm traveling full time, I sometimes care more or less about tourist attractions, and I just want to do the things I enjoy in different places. Now, the last personal consideration is, what is the level of English spoken? Now, I'm guessing English because you're watching this video, but if you speak Arabic, Spanish, French, whatever, it would be that language. So this personally matters very little to me, but to some people, they find it to be more comfortable in a country that either speaks their language or knows the basics. For example, Thailand isn't fluent in English, but people know the basics. Now, I actually enjoy not knowing what's going on around me. I just assume everybody's talking positively and everybody loves each other and all is great. So I kind of enjoy not knowing what's going on. So I like being in countries that don't speak too much English, but I know some people where they'll only travel to countries that do speak English. So again, it's a personal preference. And that finishes off my personal considerations. So I go through that checklist of logical considerations and personal to figure out what countries do I want to visit. Now I want to share with you my top 5 countries for working and also my top 5 countries for visiting. Now these are clear distinctions. Working means I want to spend over a month here growing my business and doing things, where traveling means I would not want to spend over a month here growing my business and I'm just here on a trip. Now, obviously there's more than 5 countries I like in each category, but I tried to choose my favorites here. So top 5 countries for working and why. The first one is Mexico. And for the cities, I love Mexico City, followed by Santiago de Querétaro. Now, why? Well, first off, Mexico is safer than you think. At least in the United States, we have a bad perception of Mexico generally, and I think it's much more safe than the name it gets. It's still not safe, but it's much safer than the name it gets, in my opinion. And actually, I think that also the US isn't too safe, so I think they're about the same, to be honest. There's also a lot of entrepreneurs to meet in Mexico City. There's a lot of people going through the city, so you meet people when they're traveling. There's really fast internet. There's a ton of Airbnbs that are really good for working. If you are going there, I really like the Roma and Condesa area as well as Polanco. It's a reasonable cost of living, around $1,500 to $2,500 to live a middle class, good quality of life. The time zone's obviously awesome. I think you're in Central. and you have some of the world's best food. I mean, Mexico City, the food is amazing, and it's also easy to stay for long periods of time, or at least as an American. I believe we get 6 months visa free, which is really easy to drop in and just stay for quite a while. Next is the United States. Now, obviously, I'm from here, but I still think it's one of the best places for working and living, and I think it's one of the best countries. Now, cities, I put quite a few because I've been to a lot of cities here, but I want to emphasize probably West Palm Beach and Palm Beach, Florida. I think these are great places for business networking, for seeing just amazing things in terms of like people's achievements, yachts, houses, boats. It's really motivating. The time zone's awesome. There's really fast internet. It's safer than you think, and you can shoot guns, so that's really fun. Next up is Thailand, and Thailand is where I've chosen to make my home base. In fact, I actually purchased a condo in Chiang Mai, Thailand, which is my home base for around 4 to 6 months of the year. Now, my favorite cities in Thailand are Chiang Mai, Bangkok, Phuket, and Koh Samui, but my favorite of all these is Chiang Mai. Now, why? I think Thailand has the world's best food. It's one notch ahead of Mexico, in my opinion. It's very safe. Not even very, it's extremely safe. The internet's ridiculously fast. There are a ton of entrepreneurs to meet in pretty much every major city. It's very inexpensive. You could live for like $200 a month if you're really roughing it, but I spend personally around $1,000 a month in Chiang Mai, $1,500 in Bangkok, and $1,750 in Phuket. It's easy to stay for a long period of time as an American. You can get, there's a lot of visa schemes that you can work around. And also there's many nearby countries to go to that are only an hour or two away. You can go to, for example, Laos, Cambodia, Malaysia, Vietnam. I mean, there's a ton of countries that are just $100 plane ticket, which is really nice. Also, the convenience in Thailand is unmatched in terms of doctor visits, going to the gym, getting food delivery, having maids come, going to spas. Everything is just super convenient and easy. Second to last here, and I mentioned this before, is Azerbaijan, specifically the city of Baku. It is so underrated, but you're going to feel like a trendsetter. It's a really interesting mix of Soviet oil money like Dubai, Qatar, Kuwaitish, and Islamic architecture, which I've never seen anywhere else because it was part of the Soviet Union, I believe. It's inexpensive, around $1,000 a month is what you're probably going to spend, and it's safe. So I really like Baku, Azerbaijan. Final one here is Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Lots of entrepreneurs to meet, very safe, fast internet, again, close countries nearby, inexpensive. It's really diverse in a well-managed way where everybody seems to get along really well between the Malays, the Indians, the Chinese, the 3 core ethnic groups. So there's a lot of great food from each of them, and there's tons of Airbnb options. So those would be my top 5 picks for where you'd actually want to work and stay, and I have worked and stayed in all these destinations. I've spent about 7 months in Mexico, most of my life in the United States, a couple years in Thailand, a month in Azerbaijan, and actually I spent the least time in Malaysia, but I can definitely vouch for it. So let's talk about my 5 countries I like to visit, but not for working, or at least not for working for a long time. In my situation, your situation may be different. Now, these aren't actually ranked in order, but if I had to say a favorite, and I'm going to, it's Japan. Cities would be Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, but my favorite is Tokyo. I love Tokyo. Why? And this comes down to my personal preference. The thrift shops in Japan are insane. If you're interested in thrifting, Japan is the best in the world. If you're interested in watches, Japan has the best watch shops in the world. I picked up a really cool vintage Pepsi last time I was there. The prices are insane, especially as the yen decreases. There's a lot of just weird, interesting, typical Japanese stuff you'd expect, from weird robots to just bizarre, strange things. And it's super interesting. Internet speeds are blazing fast. It's probably the safest place in the world, with the politest people, amazing food, and actually it's a lot cheaper than you think, especially if the yen following, which obviously is sad for different reasons, but as a tourist, it's really inexpensive. Next up is South Korea, now specifically Seoul. I think South Korea has the best coffee in the world, and I really like coffee, so that matters to me. Crazy internet speeds, really interesting fashion scene, friendly people, really fun nightlife. I'm not a big nightlife person, but I do love it in Korea, and tons of Airbnb options. However, both Korea and Japan, why would I not live there longer term? Because I did spend like 3 weeks in Japan and a month in Korea, and it was hard. The time zone is just brutal. You are awake till like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. every night taking meetings, at least if you run an agency and you have a lot of calls on the calendar. If you run an agency and you don't have a lot of sales calls on the calendar, you need to watch my other videos. Now, next up we have Monaco. Monaco is just because it's really expensive. I spent some time in Monte Carlo. I stayed on a sailboat there, which is really cool. And I think it's interesting because it's a bit humbling as how small you are in terms of the whole entrepreneurial world. It's great for materialistic motivation, which I don't think that's a super healthy thing, but it's fun for a short period of time. You know, cars, watches, boats, really interesting place. Now, second to last, we have Bangladesh, specifically the cities of Dhaka and Khulna. I think that Bengalis might be the most outgoingly friendly people you'll ever meet. There is pretty much no tourism, meaning you get a lot of curious people that are coming up to you and saying hi. It can be a little bit overwhelming, but I think it's quite fun. You're also going to feel like a complete explorer because you're the only foreigner. Now for me, I'm about 6'6" or 202 centimeters and white, and I stand out like a sore thumb in Bangladesh. And I think it's so funny to have like kids come up to me and want to take pictures, and it's just very fun. And it is complete sensory overload. You know, we're talking sights, smells, tastes, etc. Now, final one here is Vietnam. I really like Ho Chi Minh and also Ha Long, as well as Hanoi. Hanoi would probably be my favorite. Now, it's dirt cheap, just incredibly inexpensive. The nightlife's quite fun. The food is really good, and the portions are like nicely sized. You never feel too full in a way. I don't know, explain it. It's like clean food. It's safe, very vibrant energy, and I think maybe the most beautiful nature I've ever experienced. Now, I want to share 3 quick bonuses here. The first one is Nomad List, which you should definitely check out. It's a great site for looking into countries and seeing what people think of them. Now, I use this as a starting point. I don't use all their data, but it's a great starting point to then go do further research. The second is, if you do want to go to every country, or at least want to track it, this spreadsheet is super useful. These will all be in the document if you go ahead and sign up for the document. But this is like the best spreadsheet you could possibly imagine for tracking countries. This guy Bart made it, and it's amazing. So I'll have that linked in my document if you want to go to his website and download it. And the final one is this videos on how many countries there are. If you're a geography nerd like me, you probably know this, but if you're new to this whole travel thing, it's a really interesting question to answer as to how many countries there are, because there's not really a clear answer. So 3 little resources that you may enjoy. This is a question I get asked a lot, and that is, how do I choose an Airbnb? Now, I'm going to answer this assuming that you're doing a longer stay. If you're staying in a place for 2 or 3 days, I don't think it really matters. So I'm going to be answering this from a work perspective, meaning you're going to go to a place, you're going to see some things, but your goal is to get a lot of stuff done. Now, I pretty much always stay in an Airbnb. On a rare occasion, I might stay in a hotel or a homestay. In some countries, those are common, but the large majority of time, and for the last, 6, 7 years, whatever, it's been Airbnb. When it's not Airbnb, I do look at booking.com, hotels.com, Google Hotels, American Express travel portal. You can get like a free night every year with the American Express Platinum card if you are a U.S. citizen, and a Marriott Bonvoy travel portal. They have a Marriott Bonvoy card. I forget how much it costs, but you get like 5 free nights for signing up or something, so I've done that. Now, getting to booking an Airbnb. When looking for an Airbnb, you're going to have many more options available if you book 3 to 6 plus months in advance. I prefer 4 months in advance, and have flexible dates. For example, on Airbnb, you can see you can plug in like, I want to go for a month, any of these certain dates. This will get you way more options and way more variety, lower prices, etc. Also, if you're worried about plan changes, you can look for Airbnbs that allow flexible cancellation. Often it's a full refund until like a week before. One last thing I'll make a note of actually is that all Airbnbs are negotiable. Hosts can give you discounts. So if you see a place that's out of your budget but you want it, just ask. A lot of times people will say yes. I've stayed up to like 50% on Airbnbs by doing this. And naturally, a lot of these Airbnbs will have a discount when you choose to book for a month as opposed to like a week or a day. But you can always ask for additional discount, and a lot will say yes. Especially during COVID, this was such a good trick. It still works now, but a bit less. But during COVID, this crushed. So let's go ahead and go down to the rest of the things I look at for Airbnbs. So unless I'm staying at a country that has very high standards, South Korea, Japan, etc., I do look a lot at reviews. Now, I will book a place in those countries that don't have reviews because people generally just have such high standards, it's not an issue. I'll also occasionally bypass this if it's a new listing from a superhost and he has a bunch of other reviews. That I'll sometimes do, but even then, it's their first time having someone stay there, and there's often hiccups you have to discover. But if you also get a discount, then I definitely consider it a bit more. Now, on to Airbnb, one of the main things here is I look at the description, The photos, sometimes there's a picture of a speed test, or reviews that mention the internet. Ideally specifics. I don't like it when it just says fast internet. I'd prefer if it says like what is the upload and download speed, and sometimes they'll even message the host to ask them about the speed test result, the speedtest.net. You can send it to them, they'll give it to you normally, because I really don't want to go to a place that has bad internet, because that means that I have to figure something out really quick, which takes a lot of mental energy, time, and might lead to you missing meetings. Now, internet out of the way, there are 7 other things that I'm typically looking for in order to be very productive at an Airbnb. Now, the first one is a desk. Now, that's pretty obvious, but I'm a bit taller, so if you're a bit taller as well, I try to compare the desk to other things in the room to make sure my legs will fit under and have enough space to work. A lot of these Airbnbs will put like a tiny little crap desk just because it lets them say like Airbnb made for working, which doesn't mean anything, by the way. It's just like a filter that they now get checked for. But I like to compare that desk to other things to make sure I can actually work on it. I don't want to be like this on the desk all day. It's not good. So I also look if a desk is built-in, meaning is it like actually connected to the floor, the wall, or some other object? Like, can I move it around? And this comes down to like getting a good meeting background. So I don't want a built-in desk. Now, I also try to avoid plastic desks or desks that look wobbly. Now, if it's a short trip for like a couple days, I don't care. But like, if you're going to be spending like a lot of time working every day, you don't want to be working on some cheap, crappy desk. It's no fun. The next thing is a chair. Now, that's pretty obvious, but ideally, I'm looking for an office chair. But it's surprising how few Airbnbs actually do have office chairs. And if they do, you might be spending like an extra $200 for an office chair on a listing, or even more sometimes. So if you do find a place that's perfect, but it lacks an office chair, I've had pretty good luck just asking hosts if they could add one, especially if I'm staying for a month. A lot of times they will. Or sometimes I'll just buy an office chair or a desk or some random item if the Airbnb is perfect, but it's lacking it, and then I'll just give it to the host or donate it after. You could try to sell a marketplace. I just don't want to bother. Now, this is oddly specific, but there's one type of chair I really dislike. I'll screen share here. This chair, for whatever reason, I've had this chair in like 10 different countries, or a chair that looks like it, and I swear these things always break. The best example of this is I once had a leg break and I fell out of a chair on a sales call, so not ideal. Now, since I'm on the phone a lot, my lighting is important, but I generally don't worry about it that much because I can just buy a selfie light and a tripod for like $50 or less. But if I can find a place with nice lighting, it's always a bonus. Now, this one is quite a pain, and that is a video call background. Now, I don't like to show a bed, kitchen, or anything except either a nice background or a flat color wall in my video calls because I think it just comes across kind of like amateur. I also think there's kind of a bad connotation around people who travel around at work, and I want to come across super professional. So I try my best to look for a place that has this possibility. I don't like using virtual backgrounds or blurs. I think they look cheap, but that's just my preference. Now, very often when I'm at an Airbnb, I end up readjusting all the furniture. So you generally get this nice, cute Airbnb aesthetic, and then I ruin it by readjusting things for videos. I'm also considering the noise and how I can reduce the noise. For example, in noisy countries, my 3 examples I've been to, India, Bangladesh, Vietnam, you'll want to read the reviews and see if people mention noise, and also look at photos to see if you're on like a major highway. Now, good news here is that Zoom's audio filtering is really good. I have found that like Slack, Huddle, or Google Meets isn't as great, but Zoom's audio filtering is awesome. And if you use noise canceling headphones, it's not too big of an issue. But one thing you do want to consider, just being a good person, is can you be loud or at least talk at like a full volume like I'm talking right now late? Or will you tick off the neighbors, especially if you're in Asia? So I always like to check with hosts like, hey, I'm on meetings till like 1, 2 a.m. Will this be an issue? I just like to get a confirmation, that way I'm not the jerk that keeps everybody up. Now, another thing is the Wi-Fi router in the room? Now, especially in Europe and older or historic homes, walls are really thick, which can completely cut signal from one room to another. So you want to pay attention to what room the router is and if you can get an idea of how thick the walls might be. Now, even regardless of the thickness of the walls, you're going to want a router you can control. Now, I typically also travel with a 10+ foot Ethernet cable to get better internet, but regardless of that, you're going to want to have the router somewhere you can move, even if you don't have an Ethernet cable. Because a lot of hotels will have a hotel Wi-Fi system where your signal is going to vary based on how many people are using it and its location, because it's a large shared unit, which I really do not like. Now, the last thing that I consider for Airbnbs is more personal, but it's worth mentioning, and that's the aesthetic or the vibe of Airbnb. Now, environment does have effect on my mood, my happiness, and my productivity, and this affects work. So I like to stay in a place where I feel good. Now, I don't need a fancy place, but I don't want like some sad, dark shack. So I don't necessarily look for fancy Airbnbs, but I do look for ones that are bright, somewhat modern, or unique. It just helps me feel more motivated and also like have this home feeling, which sometimes you crave when you're moving like 6 to 10 months out of a year like I am. So that is what I'm looking at when I'm choosing an Airbnb. Okay, next up we have my mobile work setup. This was one I got quite a few questions on. So for my mobile work setup, I generally travel with 3 different bags. A suitcase that's small enough that it can generally be a carry-on, at least on long international flights, because they normally have larger baggage allowances for carry-on. An Osprey Farpoint 40 backpack. I absolutely love this backpack. I've had it for like 6 years. It's impossible to break. Shout out to whoever took this image from on Google. And I carry a tiny Decathlon backpack that I pack inside my suitcase and use for daily use. It's super useful. This is me with it in San Marino, which is a tiny country within Italy. Now, for my actual work stuff I carry with me, given I don't have that much space. A MacBook. I have the smallest one. I don't know exact size, but the smallest MacBook. I don't carry a microphone. I used to, but the MacBook one is just so good that I don't carry one. At my house in the USA or my family home, I have a blue Snowball, and at my home in Thailand, I have a blue Yeti, but I don't feel the need to use them. I just use them because I have them. I have a Acco ergonomic keyboard. Let's see if I can get a quick close-up of this. You can see I wrist pain, and this helps a lot with it. So really like this keyboard here. It's probably one of the heaviest things I carry, but because of my wrist pain, it is worth it for me. I also have an EGA wrist and mouse rest, which I just use again for my wrist pain. If you do have wrist pain and it's bothering you, get an ergonomic keyboard, get wrist rests. It's worth it. I have a Snakebite mouse pad. I have a cabled Solaka mouse. Now this is kind of random, but I highly recommend these mouse. I have had a bunch of expensive ones all the way up to like $150, and I've had so many issues. This thing is indestructible. I just use Apple wired headphones. I actually don't normally use headphones, but when I do, I use those. Now, sometimes I use Bose Quiet Comfort 45 headphones. You can get them on their website, the refurbished ones, for a little bit cheaper. I've had no issues of mine. I use these mainly for flights or noisy locations. I use my iPhone as a webcam. That's what I'm using right now. Now, I also normally carry a small tripod to hold my webcam. For example, right now the webcam is propped up behind my computer. So my computer is like here, and the webcam is popping up right here. And sometimes I'll have a little adapter that I can stick on my MacBook to hold my phone. A 10-foot Ethernet cable, that is a big one, really helpful for getting better internet. And often you can't move the Wi-Fi router, so that 10-foot comes handy. Travel adapters for different countries, I bought a couple on AliExpress and they were fine. Typical cables and normal work stuff. And occasionally I'll also buy things that I have to leave behind depending on where I'm staying and for how long. For example, if I'm going a place for 2-3 months, is it worth spending $75 to $100 on a monitor? Yeah, absolutely. I'll make that up in productivity for sure. Or sometimes like something like a selfie light I'll buy, but I'll just have to give away unless I have room to bring it back with me. So a lot of times I do buy monitors, even though I can't always keep them. Now, I've had a million different office setups since I travel, but a couple random examples. This is an office setup I had in Tbilisi, Georgia. This was a pretty funny one in Phuket, Thailand, where I was trying to stand and work, so I used a box. This is in Chiang Mai, Thailand, before I bought my condo. And yeah, so these setups are normally like not gorgeous, but they get the job done. And the one thing I mentioned is I have like a computer holder, again, for like better ergonomics, better posture. So yeah, setups are normally quite ugly, but I wish I had a picture, but I don't have one here. Maybe I can put one in post-production. I do own a condo in Chiang Mai, which is great to have like a professional setup, but I make the most of it. You can see, like, for example, here I'm stacking a book to have this a little bit closer to eye level so I'm not strained. Let's get into the worst part about traveling. That is managing time zones. Now, this is the thing I get asked about, I think, actually the most when it comes to traveling. And the truth is, there's not a great deal to make time zones not suck. You can only make them suck less. So I found no matter where I am, given my business and agency, I'm talking to clients and also prospects, I need to be available to at least 10 a.m. PST. Now, here's what that looks like in different countries. So 10 a.m. PST, which is pretty easy no matter where you are in the US. Even moving out to Europe, going to Eastern, it's no problem. Where it starts to get hard is around Dubai. I'm fine on meetings until like 9, 10 p.m. After that, I struggle a little bit. So in my home base in Thailand, I'm normally up to about 12 a.m., 1 a.m. on meetings. Now, anywhere I go that's later than that, that's where I struggle. I notice a true dip in my close rate, in my performance, and my linguistic ability beyond midnight. By 2, 3 a.m., you might think I'm a little bit dumb. In fact, I spent a month, actually like 45 days in Seoul, Korea, and then after that I did 3 weeks in Japan, and before that I'd done 2 weeks in Taipei, Taiwan, and my revenue went down. I could not function on the phone that late. So that is a thing. So I don't spend much time past Thailand time zone because of this. Now, one of the obvious questions here is, won't I miss out on opportunities to meet prospects who aren't available at the times you are? Yes, it's a sacrifice. There are 4 options though. You can stay up later, and sometimes I do. I've actually had to stay up to like 4 a.m. for really big calls before. The worst is when you do that, when they no-show you. It does happen. You can stay in good time zones. You can hire a sales rep. That's my next step. I'm hoping to remove myself from 90% of sales this year so I can spend more time in places like Japan. Or you can understand you're going to miss out on some deals. That is the opportunity cost. Everything is an opportunity cost. Now, again, this comes back to knowing what you want in life. Would I rather make 40% less money or 20% less money and travel? Yes. Would I rather make 80% less and travel? Probably not. But like, I think I probably lose out on like 20 to 30% of opportunities while traveling. That's just a guess. And for me, that's worth it because I get a lot out of traveling and I love it. I'm really happy with my life and I want to keep doing it. So let's talk about what you can do to make the time zone easier. And I put together 7 things to help me. Now, one thing is I only take meetings generally Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday during the nights. And then I only take morning calls, which would work for Asian clients, Australian clients, and clients in New Zealand on Friday mornings. Now, that's what I'm doing in Asia. I'm going to focus these answers on Asia because managing a time zone in Europe or the US is not hard. I also try to push European prospects into earlier meeting times. Sometimes we even have a separate calendar I send them where they can't book late night slots. Because even though they could if they're time zone, I want to save those because there's not too many of them. And when I have the opportunity, I try to batch meetings back to back so you don't end up staying until 1 a.m. So maybe I'll try to push my meetings back to back from 10 p.m. to midnight, but not 1 a.m. Because the worst thing is when you have a singular meeting at 1 a.m., no meetings 2 hours before it, and you stay up for it and you get no-showed. It sucks. Also, if you're in a place for a while for sleeping, get blackout curtains. If you aren't able to get an eye mask, or if you don't care, like I actually don't care, I can sleep anywhere. I can sleep right here, right now. You can just sleep through it. Also, don't let the schedule take away your sleep. Like, it's better to just wake up later. It feels like you're not being productive because you're waking up late and like everybody tells you to wake up early, but in different time zones, it's not how it works. So I like to sleep 8 hours, which generally means I'm waking up around 10 or 11 a.m. in Thailand, so it's not too bad. A funny one, but drink your coffee a bit later in the day. You know, instead of when you wake up right away, I try to drink one at like 3, 4 p.m., give me a little kick until about midnight, 1 a.m. And the last one that's specific to running an agency is always promise your proposals or summaries, action items, any to-do items that come up on a call the next day. If you promise all these the same day, well, you're going to finish calls at midnight or 1 a.m. and then you're going to be doing work till like 3, 4. So always promise everything the next day. So I'm going to go ahead and share with you how I do my routine while traveling. Now, I'm going to give you these based on an Asian time zone, specifically Thailand is what I reference here, like my real routine, since that's where I get asked a lot of questions because it's pretty easy to figure out a routine in the US or Europe. So I want to give you my Asian routines. And the first one is if I'm in a place for 3+ months. The second one is if I'm in a place for just 1 month. And the third is if I'm in a place for less than 1 week. So let's look at these. So let's start with my routine if I'm in a place for 3+ months. Now, why does that matter? I'm factoring how much time I have to work and to do things based on how long I'm in a country. Where 3+ months, there's no rush. So on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, I'm generally going to wake up around 10 a.m., go to a coffee shop. I really enjoy having slow mornings. From around 12 p.m. to 2 p.m., maybe I'll have lunch out, meet friends, do errands or activities. I'm kind of like doing my day in reverse where I do my things at the start of the day. Then I get into work. I really enjoy this time because no one can bother me because they're not awake. Clients aren't awake, prospects aren't awake, so I do my deep work. I have dinner where I normally order into the house. And then I'm normally on meetings from around 6 p.m. to midnight. Now I'm not on 6 hours straight of calls. Normally it's like 4.5, 5, and I have some breaks in between. From about midnight to 1 a.m., I wrap up my work, any final to-do items, send reminders, check on the team, etc. And then I play on my phone and go to bed. Now, that is for Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, my heavy meeting days. On Wednesdays, I wake up, I either work or do an activity, normally work if I'm in a place for longer, get dinner with friends kind of every Wednesday because I'm on meetings otherwise, and then I do more work and then I go to bed. Friday, I do meetings from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. I do deep work until 5, and then 5 onward, I normally do an activity. On Saturday and Sunday, I either work or hang out with friends. Normally, it's like 75% work, 25% friends. Now, if I'm only in a place for 1 month, my routine is very similar on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. However, on Wednesday, I normally do more stuff because I have so many weekends on 3+ months that I don't need to rush. But when I'm in a place for 1 month, I normally do something on Wednesdays where I would otherwise mainly work. I normally do stuff pretty much all Wednesdays, Friday, 1 p.m. onward, Saturday, and Sunday. Now, I didn't start doing this much stuff. This obviously comes with me having a routine, automations, delegation, etc. But I'm able to sustain my business and do this for around a month. And then I kind of go on and off of fast travel to slow travel. Now, the final routine example I have here is fast travel. This is less than 1 week. Now, on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, I will get up, I will do an activity, have dinner, I will do meetings, and then go to bed. So like I'm pretty much only doing meetings. I'm not really doing any additional work like recording YouTube videos or writing cold emails. I'm pretty much just doing meetings. Then Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I will just do activities. Now again, this is only for a couple days. Now I think it's important to mention I avoid trips longer than a week, but less than a month because it's too long to take time completely off work and just do a bunch of stuff. And it's also too short to get all the logistics right and be productive and still see stuff like just on the weekends. So that is a pretty good thing to mention. Now I do have a typical flow that goes from like a long trip, short trip, etc. So this is what that looks like right here. So I'll normally go to a long destination for 2+ months. Then I'll do a short 3 to 4 day trip, a long destination for 1 month, a short 3-4 day trip, a long destination for 1 month, and then the longest destination for 2+ months. Now this isn't perfect, but that's generally what my life looks like. So now I want to talk about some tactical productivity hacks on how to do more with less time, as well as how I stay focused. So these two topics are very close, but not quite the same. So I'm going to separate them and go through each. Starting off, how to do more with less. So I found a lot of ways to get the most out of the time I have. Now, a big personal philosophy of mine is not wasting time. In fact, I would say that like my biggest concern is letting time slip by and not doing interesting things. So here's some of the ways that I try to optimize my time. Now, the first one is more of a philosophy, and that is doing everything with full intensity. I believe time is wasted in the between times where you're not fully resting, but maybe you're just prolonging doing a piece of work that requires full intensity. That time is wasted. You should have either been entirely resting or entirely working. So I try to work with full intensity, meaning I'm not answering my email, playing on social media, talking to friends. I am working. I try to do activities of full intensity, meaning I am fully enjoying the moment. I'm not looking at work stuff. I'm not thinking about work stuff. I'm enjoying the moment. I try to be present with people entirely. I'm not looking at my phone or thinking about work. And when I rest, I entirely rest. I don't rest in anticipation for work that I should have done. I get that work done with full intensity, and then I entirely rest. Now, if you're like, I already do this, go ahead and look at your phone. Maybe you do this, but just make sure you're not wasting 1 to 2 hours a day on your phone, where you could replace that with either actually resting, doing an activity, or working. So that full intensity mindset, and again, this works with my personality type, maybe it won't for yours, but with me, that helps a lot. Another thing that I do is hiring somebody for personal tasks that I don't want to do and also don't need to be done specifically by me. So I'll give a few examples I've implemented in my life. I have a cleaner because I don't want to clean and I can afford to have someone clean and I can do work in that time. I get my meals delivered when I'm solo or when I'm with my girlfriend, she cooks. You could have a barber come to you or have your masseuse come to you. You could use a mobile mechanic. A mobile mechanic is a random thing, but it saved me a lot of time. Instead of bringing my bike to my mechanic, I have my mechanic come pick it up. Even in Thailand, I'll have a personal assistant for busy periods of life, just worry about shipping things, printing things, or any other random tasks I need. Another one in traveling is hiring a visa agency to navigate difficult bureaucracy, especially in countries that require bribes, waiting, and are really inefficient. Hiring a visa agency can not only save you a lot of time waiting in lines and mental energy, but it can also end up saving you money too. So if you're in a country where it has a difficult visa, just hire an agency. The next thing is more of a business tactic, but it's worth mentioning. It's eliminate, automate, delegate. So what that looks like is once or twice per year, I'll do a time audit. Now, I will literally list everything I do each day between personal and business tasks. This will be like everywhere from brushing my teeth to updating a website, to writing a cold email, to answering leads. And I will track everything for around 48 hours. Now, I'm going to go through every one of these items. I'm going to score them based on, do I actually need to do this? Can I automate this? Can I hire someone for this? And if I can, is my time worth more than the person's time I'm hiring for? Like, does it make sense financially? And this audit will lead to a clear list of things that can be eliminated or changed. Now, the first is always going to be to eliminate, because a lot of things you can just get rid of. Now, if you're not familiar with the Pareto principle or 80-20 rule, go ahead and look that up. I won't go over it in depth, but in a lot of things in life, you can just completely get rid of them. Now, if I can't get rid of something, I look to automate it or systematize. Now, this won't be an automation video. That will be later maybe and be more around prospecting, what I normally talk about. But I look to automate things typically with tools like Airtable, Slack, Zapier, Problem, Make, and Clay. Now, if I can't eliminate or automate or systematize, I look if I can delegate to somebody. Now, I won't go in depth on hiring, but I will say that good hires are awesome, but bad hires take more time than doing it yourself. So don't cheap out and don't rush. Now, last thing on productivity before we talk about focus is the best thing I've ever learned from, the best resource I've ever learned from on focus was a book called 20-Hour Workweek by Matt Gallant. Shout out to Luke Voigt, my friend who introduced me to Matt. I was able to meet him in person. He's an incredible entrepreneur, and this book is just incredible. I have a link to this website in the document if you do want to download this book. If you're serious about productivity, it's a fantastic book, and it'll take you like a couple hours to read, so it's not too long. It's just a brilliant, actionable book. So check it out. Now we talk about productivity, but productivity is a little bit different than focus. So how do I stay focused? Well, the first thing is the 80-20 rule. And I'm not going to go super in depth into the 80-20 rule or Pareto principle. So if you don't know it, look it up. But I apply this to personal life, business, and even tasks within my business. Second thing is activation energy. Activation energy is how much energy it takes to do the things you need to do. So make it easy to do the right things. Plan tomorrow, today. I mean, that's a pretty simple thing, but literally plan what you're doing tomorrow, today. That way you don't have to wake up and use energy to think what you're going to do because it's already laid out. Now, even tagging onto this more, I like to lay out what I need to do in depth. So main tasks, subtasks, even more subtasks. That helps me use as little mental energy as possible when deciding what I need to do. Another simple thing is just like make your bed in the morning and put your clothes out the night before. Like simple little things like this just make it easier to not think and to use that mental energy on things that actually matter. Another mental model that I think about a lot is opportunity cost analysis. And if you don't know opportunity cost, it's the cost of choosing something. So if I want to eat candy, it tastes good, but the cost is it's not healthy for me. Now, there's also things that are less black and white than eating candy. So it's just the cost of a decision you're going to make. And there's always a trade-off. You're going to be making a trade to go for this video because right now you could be working or you could be playing a video game or hanging out with your girlfriend or friends. So there's always an opportunity cost. So this is what you need to know again. What do you want out of life? That way you have something to measure against because travel is a cost to it, right? There's an opportunity cost to traveling. And for me, it's worth it. But you need to know based on your own personal definition of success, is it worth it to you? Now, another thing that I'm really big on is saying no. Saying no more than you say yes. This is probably the biggest thing that helps me have more time. I'm really good at saying no. Say no to business ventures that distract you. Say no to marketing channels you don't need. Say no to reading books that don't help you. Say no to watching YouTube videos that don't help you. Say no a lot. Now, don't be a jerk, but be honest and say no when you need to, because it's better to say yes fully to a few things than say yes to everything and then not actually do anything well. So be careful who you say yes to and what you say yes to because you need to protect your mental energy. Now, another thing that's helped me is having a girlfriend, or if I have any female listeners, or the 5% of female listeners I have, maybe having a boyfriend, I don't know. But seriously, this does help a lot. My girlfriend Nika has made my life significantly better in multiple ways, but one of those is just not needing to think about things I don't like, such as scheduling certain activities, what clothes to wear, food, cleaning, visa logistics. She helps me a lot with visas in Thailand, so very helpful. Another thing that's a bit more tactical is scheduling trips ahead of time. So we'll talk about scheduling trips and activities. Trips meaning like the whole trip, activity meaning the stuff inside the trip. So scheduling trips ahead, I never do anything last minute because that just requires messy planning, which will break and mess things up and lead to a whole bunch of inconveniences. So I like to schedule my trips like 4 to 6 months ahead. That way I can do a little bit each day and it's never overwhelming and taking too much from my work. Now, within planning a trip, we can talk about scheduling activities. Now, same concept as scheduling trips ahead, but the actual things you're going to do and transit time. I use Google Maps to set a date and time I want to transit to see what it looks like based on that time, because things like traffic and or which subway or metro or whatever is operating that day do vary. Now, this will come down a lot to your personality type, but I like heavily scheduling with scheduled blocks for being spontaneous. So I'll give an example from one of my fast travels, not my work travel, but fast travels. We talked about up here, like my work travel, where I'm doing a month, 3 months, but this is fast travel example. So as you can see here, it is pretty in depth. I mean, I have like what I'm doing all day, every day, down to the micros, because I don't need to think so hard, and that opens up more mental energy for work. So this helps me a lot, but some people might be like, this is crazy, but this is what I like. This is what I enjoy. So that's what I have here. Now, the final thing is some Q&A. So I was asked from a lot of people questions about travel. I actually put an Instagram story up asking what questions people had, and I've answered most of them in this document, but there were a few, 5 to be specific, that didn't fit into this document anywhere. So I want to go ahead and answer them. And if you're watching this and you've been interested this far, these will probably help you out as well. So make sure to stay tuned. The first one is, how do I book flights? So if I'm booking using credit card points, and I recommend getting into credit card points if you're based in the United States, or you're from the United States, you have a US passport, would be American Express travel portal. And that's when I'm using higher end airlines such as Qatar, Emirates, Singapore, as they don't really have more mid or lower tier, mainly just high tier airlines. So I book using points on those airlines. If I'm booking more of a mid tier or normal flight, I use Capital One's travel portal. This is like for like American Airlines or AirAsia, for example. And if I'm not using points, I either book on Google Flights or directly to airlines. A lot of times, if you book directly for airlines, it might be like 5 or 10% more, but you get the ability to like credit your flights, cancel, reschedule for free, which a lot of times when you're booking through a travel hub, you don't get those opportunities because they're buying the flights in bulk. And they lose some of the benefits come with them. Also, like support is almost always be better contact the airline direct than your booking engine. But if you book through a booking engine, the airline won't normally speak to you directly. The next thing I got asked is how do you meet people while traveling? I have quite a few answers to this, so I'm just going to answer shotgun style. Facebook groups, either based on interest, such as entrepreneur group, or local, such as entrepreneurs in Chiang Mai or foreigners in Chiang Mai. Meetup.com for events, Eventbrite for events, talking to people in coffee shops, co-working spaces, hostel bars, or even just talking to strangers in restaurants. Paid communities, such as you pay for a course or program to meet people, such as my program, Grow B2B. Check it out, by the way, if you have a B2B business and you want to get more meetings. On Airbnb experiences, I join Airbnb experiences, and even on social media, I look at like hashtags, location tags, or I'll post a story to see if any of my followers are in a place. What is my favorite place to find things to do? I like to look on Reddit, YouTube, Atlas Obscura. It's really interesting. I've checked it out. It's just like strange things to do that you don't see on normal blogs. Airbnb experiences, or if you just search things to do in location, understand that will give you like a list of SEO optimized things based around affiliate links, but it's still a good starting place. And then I do more obscure research on Atlas Obscura. What random travel tips have I found helpful? Don't shop for flights till you're ready to book, because if you keep looking, prices will go up. Always take a video upon checkout at your hotels or Airbnbs in case someone opens a dispute against you. This has happened once in my life, but I still like to do it. Keep your AirTags in your luggage and change your AirTag batteries annually, because if you do lose your baggage or an airline loses it, they won't help you if you can't prove it's lost generally. US dollars are king. I carry like 1,000 with me. Also for safety, share your location on your iPhone with friends and family. And the last thing here for random tips is ego is the #1 way I see especially young guys get into trouble while traveling. So drop the ego, don't be a prick, and be nice to people. Now, my last 2 things from the Q&A is one is where do I get travel insurance? I use Safety Wing. There'll be a link down below if you want to check it out. I have actually filed a claim with them, and they're pretty good for an insurance company. And the final question, this was a random one. Is there any airline I avoid? I'm pretty easy with airlines. I fly economy normally, but the only airline I try to avoid is Royal Air Maroc. They are probably the worst when it comes to service and support. So there you have it. That is how I structure my entire life of traveling and doing this stuff for a long time. I hope this has helped you even if your current travels or with your future travels. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Again, if you want this document, it's available in the description. And this video wasn't my normal one about building B2B companies, but if you do want help building a B2B company, that's what I do. And you can also book a call to learn more about that in the description. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.